You know that one device your parents got you as a kid that maybe didn't perform well, was a little cheaper, and maybe even a little bit older, but it got the job done? Well, now times have changed because with used tech, you can get some pretty decent performance at a fraction of the cost, and it made me wonder what iPhone really fit into this category for like a kid. And the first one that came to mind was the iPhone Savings Edition, if that's what SE really means, 3rd generation. But is that really the right recommendation? In this video, I'm going to explore the pitfalls and strengths of the iPhone SE to see if that's really true. We first need to start off a little bit with the background and purpose of the iPhone Savings Edition. The first one was released back in 2016 that looked kind of like an iPhone 5S, but it had the processor of the iPhone 6S. The second one was released back in like 2020. It had the design of the iPhone 8, however, had a newer processor of the iPhone 11. And then finally, you have the iPhone SE 3rd generation, which kept the same previous design, but it has the iPhone 13 chip inside of it, which gives it more power. Basically, the iPhone SE is an older looking iPhone with newer internals to make a good budget-friendly option. Now, Apple still sells the iPhone SE brand new for $430, which honestly I think is kind of ridiculous for a phone that looks this dated. But do not buy them brand new, and the reason why I say that is as soon as you open it out of the box, it loses like $250 worth of value instantly. You can find a nice condition version of this phone for about $200 and a decent condition one for about $170 right now, which honestly I think is a pretty good deal. And if you're curious what the current price is or you want to buy one for yourself, I do have the affiliate links down below. One of the first things we need to analyze about this phone is performance. iOS 18 runs pretty decently well on this phone, and you'll do things like scrolling through the home screen, customizing app icons, and I noticed very minimal to no lag, which typically that stuff causes lag on older iPhones. And I remember back in the day too, when my parents bought me an iPhone 3GS, and that phone was really laggy, really buggy, had minimal storage, but in 2011, that's what the under $200 phone range got you. And it's interesting to see what under $200 gets you now with this iPhone that has the A15 Bionic chip, still has 3 to 4 years of latest iOS updates, another 2 years of app support updates after that, in a phone that costs under $200. The Cellular chip 2 is also a pretty nice upgrade in this phone. The iPhone SE that came before this, the iPhone SE 2nd generation, had 4G LTE connectivity, whereas this iPhone right here has 5G connectivity, and it's not as great as the iPhone 12's 5G connectivity, however, it's still an improvement nonetheless. And then now it's time for a real performance test, gaming. I have Asphalt 9 that I'm going to be using to get a really good understanding of how this performs with a heavier app. Alright, so we're loading into the game here. So taking a look at the graphics here, it looks like it's doing a pretty decent job. Now everything looks kind of blurred out, like there's motion blur, which I think that's what it's supposed to have. But so far I'm not noticing any lag, it's pretty responsive. Alright, we won, let's go. And then we're going to go try another game here, Ultimate Racing 2D2. My brother showed me this game and it looks like one of those older iOS games, which must mean it's probably good. So we're gonna go give it a try here. Let's see if I can get Formula 1 vibes. Oh no, I went in the corner. I know I'm gonna get so many comments making fun of my driving, which is okay. Ooh, we're almost in 3rd. No, we're not, we're way behind. All right, we got 6. It's good enough for a beginner. So overall, the iPhone SE 3rd generation did a really good job when it came to gaming. And I have an interesting stat to give you guys here. The iPhone 8 scored a 1,680 multi-core score on Geekbench, whereas the iPhone SE 3rd generation scored a 5,440 multi-core score. So basically, with the iPhone SE 3rd generation, you're getting 3 times the performance than what the iPhone 8 got. Now, in terms of how much of an actual difference that makes, I don't really know, but I did used to own an iPhone XR back in the day, which was at least a year newer than the iPhone 8. And that phone performed really well when it came to gaming. And then of course, another thing we need to take a look at with this phone too is battery life. On Apple's website, they say the iPhone SE 3rd generation gets 15 hours of video playback. However, you compare that to the iPhone 8's 13 hours, the iPhone 12's 17 hours, and the iPhone 13's 19 hours, plus any battery degradation this phone would have. And that is honestly kind of decently good. It's in the lower mid-range there. But I'm kind of worried for those who are heavier users that may use their phone a lot, if that would be enough to get them throughout a day. But looking online at what people said on Reddit, they said that battery life was good enough to get them throughout a day. But do keep in mind though that as these phones age and they have older batteries that hold less capacity because of battery degradation, you may have to get replaced at some point, which is $79 from Apple. Now here's where things start to not turn great with the iPhone Savings Edition. You compare this side by side with an iPhone 6 that was released a decade ago, and on the front, they look pretty much exactly the same, which is incredibly disappointing for a phone that Apple still sells new for $430. But anyways, looking at this phone's design, you have a single 12 megapixel camera on the back, you have speakers on the bottom, an ear speaker at the top, which can act as stereo speakers, and then you have the Apple logo, which on this phone is actually in the center instead of above the center like what you see on the iPhone 8. And then of course too, you have this more rounded looking design, which is actually a stark contrast compared to what the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13's more boxier design is. And then talking about the front side, you have these hilariously big bezels, which makes my iPhone 15 Pro look incredibly modern. You have a 7 megapixel front camera, and then you have the haptic home button with Touch ID, which honestly I kind of missed, and this brought back a lot of nostalgia in terms of the home button. The screen size on this too is 4.7 inches, which in my opinion is just enough to watch any type of brain rot content. However, it is technically smaller, believe it or not, compared to the iPhone 12 mini screen, which has a 5.4 inch screen size. So this is 0.7 inches smaller screen size wise than the iPhone 12 mini. And then in terms of the screen specs, it's an LCD screen with 326 pixels per inch, which actually pales in comparison to the iPhone 12 mini screen, which has 476 pixels per inch and is an OLED display that can turn off individual pixels, giving you higher color contrast. There's also another thing that the iPhone SE screen is missing out on, and it's this thing called 3D Touch. Back in the day, all older iPhones from the iPhone 6s to the iPhone 8 had this thing called 3D Touch, which allowed you to peek into apps and just do weird gimmicky things, but was later replaced by Haptic Touch, which basically pretty much does the same thing, it's just a different vibration feel. And then weirdly enough, one of my favorite things about the iPhone SE screen is actually replacing it. I used to work at a phone repair shop, and anytime someone would come in with an iPhone SE, I always thought the screens on this were a little bit easier to replace compared to some of the newer iPhones. The only real area of concern was the Touch ID cable, because if you ripped it, you would lose Touch ID. But luckily, I didn't rip any Touch ID cables, which is pretty nice. But this kind of leads me into another main point I have about the iPhone SE, and that's that the screen is cheaper to replace compared to any other iPhone model. It's $120 to replace the screen from Apple, and if you compare that to a newer phone, it's like half the cost. But this phone is still pretty expensive to replace. A back glass is worth more than what the phone's worth. A charge port is also kind of the same story. So if you are someone who is thinking about buying one of these phones, definitely get a good case and a good screen protector to prevent any expensive repair costs. And then next up, we're going to take a look at the iPhone SE's camera. I took a few photos with this phone, and overall, I think the cameras are pretty good. It is missing out on some camera features like the ultra-wide camera and night mode that the iPhone 12 mini has. But I can go start off with the different zoom lenses here. So I have this main like 1x zoom lens right here. There's no ultra-wide like I mentioned on this phone. Then I try to go like maybe about 2 times in. And as you can see, the exposure kind of went up there. And then 3 times in, you know, again, I have some pretty good details here still of baby Jesus and Joseph and Mary. And then next up here, we have a video. So this one I took walking down one of the paths near my neighborhood, and this turned out to be pretty good. And then this next photo I took here was a puddle I saw by the sidewalk. As you can see, it did a really good job of picking up the quality of the blades of grass kind of in the water. Up kind of farther away, it does look a little bit pixelated, but that's to be expected. It's a 12 megapixel camera. It doesn't have the 48 megapixels that the iPhone 15s have. And then here's another portrait photo I took of me. Again, picked up those details really well. The colors look pretty good. I took this photo too, also to kind of show off the different colors. So as you can see, the sun setting, you know, kind of behind this house. You can see the nice warm hues on the grass. It really saturated the grass pretty well. And this was taken like in winter time too, so everything looks kind of dead, but the colors here turned out great. And then here's a rear-facing portrait. This one didn't turn out super good, and that's mainly my bad because I put this on a tripod and I was trying to frame it right, and it didn't get it really good. But overall, I like how these photos turned out, just like I would like it if you hit the like button. So by now, you have a pretty good understanding of the iPhone SE 3rd generation, but what about this rumored iPhone SE 4th generation that's supposed to come out? This rumored iPhone SE 4th generation is supposed to cost $500, look like an iPhone 14, featured the action button, USB-C charging, and a newer processor with Apple Intelligence. Now, while all that seems really exciting, it is expected to release middle of this year, like June 2025, and it's also going to cost over $500, which isn't great because in this video, we're looking for around the $200 range. So then what else could you consider if you want a newer looking iPhone? Well, what about that iPhone 12 mini that I mentioned earlier in this video? For only $50 more, you're getting a nicer design, a 5.4-inch OLED display, as well as some other improvements too, like MagSafe compatibility. The only real downsides though with the iPhone 12 mini is it's a year older processor wise, so it may get a year less OS updates, and also too that a screen replacement on the iPhone 12 mini is $229, about $100 more compared to the iPhone SE3 screen replacement cost. And if you break that screen too, it's worth just about as much as what the phone is worth. So what it really boils down to is if you can spend $50 or more, around $230 to be exact, the iPhone 12 mini is a great choice for newer tech features. And then the iPhone SE 3rd generation is great for a low cost of $170, as well as cheaper screen replacements and a newer processor. But in my opinion, I would say the winner out of this video is actually the iPhone 12 mini. And the reason why I say that is you're getting a lot of newer tech features for only $50 more, where it kind of trumps the whole point that a year older processor is really going to make that big of a difference. But anyways, that's just my opinion. At the end of the day, I'd honestly let the kid decide what phone they want. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please give me a like and maybe a subscribe, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.